Greetings and salutations from your friends over here at the Podwans podcast and StarWarsLawyer, aka the Lawwans. We're going to have a great show tonight. We're going to be talking about Order 66. When is it enough? So we have a great panel of guests. I am joined by my friends, the Podwans. We got Luke, Char, J, and Hereth, who may not slander a clone today. So we are ready with our great panel of guests. Luke, bring our first one on.
Doesn't matter who it is.
Does not matter who it is.
Just jump scare Chris and be like, it's someone he's not expecting.
Here we go, and it's Master Out.
Oh, hey. How you doing, everybody?
How's it going, Master Allen?
It is going good. This is a emotionally exhausting time of year, so let's talk about an emotionally exhausting topic. It sounds good.
Yeah.
Oh yeah. Go ahead, Chris.
And next, we have I'll say someone this time, make it easier for you. Stardustem.
Oh, I was going with Chase.
Okay, then.
See, I gotta keep you on your
I
toes.
was like, all right.
I gotta go then, I guess. Hi, I'm Stardustem, Emily. Long time no see on this podcast.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah, absolutely.
The Andor Prophet, the one show without Order 66.
Thank God.
Or a lightsaber.
Tony doesn't know what that is.
For now.
Yes. See,
No, Tony.
I still had the theory that I was like, oh, maybe we'll get Order 66 from the Separatist point of view, because that'd be interesting. Like, you just have the Separatists on the world, and all of a sudden the clones start turning on the Jedi, and you're like,
What
do we
is
do?
going on?
Do we
stop
win?
them? Like what?
Like, do we win? No, everyone loses. And last but certainly not least, our good friend Chase, Forward into the Black.
Oh, hi there.
Hello there.
That was a jump scare. The
Boo.
way you just did that.
I got a question. Does FNMA stand for fucking Master Allen?
Friendly neighborhood Master Allen.
What?
On a bunch of the things, Friendly Neighborhood Master Allen has too many characters, and so
Oh.
I
all
guess I
right.
should have just stayed in. I should have just stayed in my work clothes, because then I'd be like in the martial arts uniform, and then people would stop calling me Jedi Master Allen. Be like, no, that's not where I got the title from. I don't want to be a Jedi. Those are problems I don't need.
Yeah, absolutely. So everybody that is aware, we are going to be talking about Order 66, and I cannot stress this enough. This is not a debate. This is a nice, orderly conversation. If voices are raised, there will be times where Chris, he's really good at this, can kind of direct us back to the conversation, and if we get going on funky things,
I'll bang
we'll be
my
able to get
gavel.
back. Yeah.
Chris,
exactly.
bring up the
Yeah.
duel, like,
But
Well, except
But-
the thing is right now is a lightsaber,
yeah, just bang the table.
courtesy
Go
of
for it.
Level Up sabers.
so
Speaking of
and-
Order
We're gonna stick.
66,
Yeah.
Oh, Jesus Christ. But if anybody
JJ's
in
in
the
chat.
oh jeez. Here we go.
JJ, get in here.
Yeah, JJ will
Hello,
be in
what
here
have
soon.
we here?
Oh man. If anybody would like to join in, we do have spots. If you're on the Discord, in the Podwans Discord, let us know, and then we can bring you in. We can send you a DM through Discord.
Just damn Luke.
Yeah.
Community conversation.
Yes, it is community conversation. Chris, you go ahead and get this started then.
Yeah, why are
This
we
is your
having
idea.
this? Why are we having this discussion? So if you watch football or you only watched football on Monday, there was the Mandalorian season 3 trailer at halftime. And Hereth, how do you feel about that football game?
We don't talk about it.
Okay, all right.
It's like we don't talk about Bruno.
No, we just don't.
but at the same time, they talk about Bruno.
Exactly.
Is Mace still?
Did
Is Mace
Tampa
going to be
Bay
here
get
so that
their
he can
butt
talk about
kicked?
it? Because he's a Cowboys fan.
Yeah. So, during the trailer, there is a perceived attack on the temple that might be Order 66, or it could be, the Darksaber retrieval. We don't know yet. But first thought was Order 66. So that brought up some new Star Wars discourse as opposed to the 3, recycled topics. And
We did it, guys.
yeah, we did it.
We broke through
We managed to cut through the Rey Skywalker discourse.
the Rey and Luke
something
discourse.
that
It's
is
over.
More annoying.
Oh,
Yeah.
don't worry. That's still happening in my comments then. I have been blocking a lot of people, so
As you should.
As you should.
So now we're going to talk about whether we have narratively outgrown the need for more Order 66 perspectives or scenes in Star Wars media. Because I think even though we're getting this a lot in television, this also does extend to the video games with Cal, comic books with Kanan, although that's a whole different story. Thanks, Dave. And we'll see if we get them in future books if they decide to go into that early post-Empire phase.
Well, think about it, Chris. We have that new Inquisitor movie.
That's true. Although, and that's one thing we can talk about: Order 66 from someone that becomes an Inquisitor other than Riva,
And also the Inquisitor.
Yeah.
Grand Inquisitor.
We don't know what happened to the Grand Inquisitor.
Right. So we'll just get into it. I think Order 66 has obviously been around since Revenge of the Sith, but Order 66 outside of the movies has happened since 2005 for a wide range of from the OG Battlefront 2, where you are committing Order 66 as a clone to yes. Yeah, you're
I'm not. And to be honest,
It's messed up.
when you do that mission, it is wild.
with
It is
one
wild.
You're just running around the temple as Jedi are just dying near you.
It's not my favorite, but it's like Jesus Christ. If we got this on film, that would not have been good.
But
That'd have
it's
been like 30 minutes of like straight
it's
clones
so
taking
messed
them out.
up.
It's
just
also
so
led
messed
in with the best, I think, dialogue by a clone,
Mm-hmm.
where they're basically saying, like, did anybody have any silent traitorous thoughts as we, marched on the Temple of Coruscant? It's like, if we did, no one said it. No one said a word.
Yeah. If you play that, when you play that mission, I think that gives me like the goosebumps. Like the way Tamora Morrison says it is just like, and this was before the chips.
Mm-hmm.
So it was
It was
thought that
before
they
chips
had
were
just,
canon.
yeah. So they had thought that they were like that. They all knew the plan and they played their part and that's what they were gonna do. With Order 66 with canon from what it was back then, I think it's best that they did the chips.
Mm-hmm.
Because then you have something because remember when they were doing the Clone Wars, they were making these clones into having like personalities and to be actual human beings, right? And the horrifying part of Order 66 is that they are betraying a lot of the commanders that they have connection with, like for example, Plo with Wolf. Like imagine that.
Except it wasn't Wolf. It wasn't
not Wolf, but it was
Jag.
Yeah, it was Jag. But like you know what I mean. Like it's like turning on the Jedi and having these from having 7 seasons of character development for all of these clones to have that be the reason the chips are the reason and not just that they're assholes.
They're just good soldiers following orders.
Exactly. Yeah. I think that part of Order 66 I think is probably the better part of it because I feel like if they didn't put the chips in, it makes a lot of the clones like lose their humanity.
Mm-hmm.
You know what I mean? If that makes any sense, because it's like you build them up so much in the Clone Wars series, but if you don't have those chips, then they're just backstabbers at that point.
Well, and
truly,
and for all this stuff that they put like Clone Commander and Jedi, teammate through in all of those seasons, all the things they overcome, all the stuff that they encounter, all the weird backstabbing and other stuff that happens from other sources, like to all of a sudden have Cody be 100% cool with firing artillery at Kenobi would be really
that's
weird.
heavy. That's heavy.
Like that would be really weird. And so like having something make more sense is good. Now, for anybody that has read the non-canon novelization, there's a really funny part in the book
Yeah.
where like Cody gets Order 66 and then immediately laments because he just handed Kenobi back his lightsaber.
He's like, why did I hand him back my lightsaber?
Yeah,
like
and it's
couldn't
like,
this
oh,
call
crap.
came in like 5 seconds earlier.
Yeah.
Yeah. And like I will be completely honest, I have not especially loved any of the prequel novelizations, and that one's sort of like but like that's a highlight of that book, like the way that they do that. And that, again, it's before chips, and so it's like just the way that the attitude just flips. And then
Yeah. One thing, and this is kind of my whole thing about Order 66 in general, and its tie into the original trilogy. I think that the chips make sense with the Clone Wars being in existence, but I think going from episode 3 into episode 4, you do have this pretty smooth transition of like, yes, the clone troopers will become the stormtroopers. So it does make sense that they will betray the Jedi. I think just the movies, I think it makes pretty good sense that they do this and that they were always insidiously trying to go after the Jedi. I think Order 66 is very interesting, and I think it's something that can be elaborated on, has been elaborated on quite a lot. But the one thing that's always bothered me about, even before we had like it showing up everywhere, was it always felt like it was overshadowing ABY and BBY. Like the Battle of Yavin was the most important part of Star Wars. And now with Order 66 getting pretty much attention everywhere, it feels like, so why are we using ABY, BBY as like the most important thing in Star Wars was the destruction of the first Death Star and the first inkling that like the Empire might fall is now overshadowed by something that happened, that was made decades later and happened years earlier. So it's an inconsistent thing, and I get it. Stories elaborate, stories grow, but it's something that's always like, as an OT person, like I'm like.
So then, Chase, here's my question: If that's the case,
kids are on your lawn.
My lawn. Clone Wars was mid until season 5, kids. I'm sorry.
Clone Wars was mid after season 5, but that's okay.
I've never heard that one before.
Wow, all right.
In my opinion.
Wow.
Clone Wars wasn't made for me. Clone Wars was never made for me.
I was too old for Clone Wars when it came out.
And there's a whole lot of stuff in Clone Wars that like I wasn't the intended audience. And so I've never pretended like Clone Wars is a central part of Star Wars for me, but I also don't begrudge anybody for whom it is.
No, yeah.
And so like the Clone Wars being mid is a very, very dismissive way of going, I wasn't the audience. This wasn't for me. There's a lot of stuff here that wasn't what I was looking for from Star Wars and everything else. Like I know there are a bunch of people in the comment section, a bunch of people here that like that was their gateway into Star Wars. It's a huge part of the fandom for them, and I don't want to poo-poo that or anything like that. That was just that was a spicy take to get a giggle.
So
like,
Alan, like the way you just said that, I feel like that is the nuance that is missing in these conversations that we have on Twitter. You know what I mean? I feel like I feel like a lot of the Star Wars community are very much they are the first to do what in the hell?
How does this guy keep coming back?
What the hell? They commented on this last time. Sorry,
yesterday he commented the exact same thing from
last like who are you talking to? Are you talking to me? I
thought it was the three of us.
As good as Master Allen's now. So who are you talking about, bub? Who are you talking about?
Well, mine's finally back after the shaving era. Like I have lines again. It's great. I feel good.
No, but I mean, back to my question. What I was going to ask Chase. Chase, do you think that they should switch the ABY to before or after?
No, absolutely not. And kind of to elaborate more on what Master Allen says, like I do enjoy the Clone Wars. Like I have to say that all the time that I actually do enjoy the Clone Wars. I was too old when it came out to like fully enjoy it. For me, Star Wars is stormtroopers, not clone troopers. But we have this new generation coming in where Star Wars is clone troopers, not stormtroopers. So for them to say we're going to, I mean, they tried to do it in like one of those like visual dictionaries, like, oh, was it ASI, BSI, after Star Killer incident?
Yeah,
before Star Killers? And I'm like,
Yeah.
as much as I love the sequels, no, absolutely not. So if we do AO6, BO6, like, nah,
Like
absolutely not.
I couldn't see AO6 or BO6 for the simple fact that the Emperor just kind of like hushed the Jedi away pretty much immediately. So I could see like after the like AFE and BFE, like before the formation of the Empire and after the formation of the Empire. But when it comes to the rebellion and the New Republic, ABY and BBY still makes sense. Because that's the definitive turning
The
point
rebellion,
of the galaxy.
I think most people forget. I don't think it's the rebellion was so central to the original trilogy. It's kind of what the whole original trilogy is built around. I think people forget how central the rebellion is to Star Wars sometimes.
Yeah.
I think the Jedi really sidetrack, but like, not sidetrack. I'm sorry, I'm not a Jedi fan, but like I think people forget.
That's why Rogue One's your favorite.
He doesn't like the laser swords. It's okay.
I like the laser sword when it's in Rey's hand. But I think like sometimes, yeah, like with the naming, people forget, like, I think when they forget how big, how the Empire was and how much that affected the galaxy. So like Chase was saying, that being the turning point of them possibly being able to be taken down is a huge deal, as was just anybody being able to stand up to the Empire in that way, but especially the rebellion.
Oh yeah.
And let's pretend it's history instead of fiction.
Mm-hmm.
For our own timeline, the before Christ and the in the year of our Lord thing didn't happen until hundreds of years after the point that was created as the arbitrary point.
Mm-hmm.
Like that was done retroactively. And Star Wars is a long time ago in a galaxy far, far away. And so we are seeing the histories. And so the prequels, while they are from a storytelling standpoint important to some people, from a history of the world standpoint, the future sees the Battle of Yavin as an important turning point within the galaxy, whereas Order 66 less so, because it's not like the future isn't thinking about the rise of the authoritarianism that had to be destroyed, but the beginning of its crumble.
Mm-hmm.
No, yeah.
And kind of to really touch on what Emily said is I do think, as much as I do enjoy the lore of the Jedi and the Force and the Sith, and like there's a lot of really amazing things to explore. I love like digging into Force lore. Star Wars was always about the rebellion versus the Empire. And I think even in the prequels, the reason that like the prequels got so much hate to begin with was the political discourse. It was the separatists versus the Republic, and it was also the forming seeds with Padme building the rebellion in those movies. And even in the sequels, we go back. It's the First Order versus the New Republic, but it's still like, for me, it's like it's stormtroopers versus the guerrilla warfare. It's TIE fighters versus X-Wings. And it's like, yes. And then there's someone behind the scenes with a lightsaber doing a lot of work. And that's great to see. But it's always been about the rebellion and the Empire.
And that's why I think that they chose to, Poe is a New Republic fighter and Finn is a defected stormtrooper, because that they were getting back to those roots of like, it is versus that with two people with lightsabers who act as like kind of the like representation of the bigger battle going on. Kylo Ren versus Ren is a representation of, in some ways, of the First Order versus the rebellion.
Yeah.
And the sequels aren't trying to be as heavily anti-war as the prequels were. Like that's the other thing. Like, for as much as people,
one part of Last Jedi, yeah,
but like thematically, like the OT and the prequels are very much an admonishment of the military imperialism of the United States between Iraq, Afghanistan, and then
Vietnam.
and Vietnam. so like for me, part of the reason why animated Clone Wars never clicks for me is because when animated Clone Wars was coming out, my generation was the people that were going to the Middle East. I was a senior in high school when 9/11 happened, or excuse me, I was a freshman in college when 9/11 happened. And so like all of this like rah militarization and everything else, like all of that was happening to my peers and going off to a foreign country and all of these things. And like there's a whole lot in the prequels that's like, this is bullshit. We should not be doing this. And then the animated Clone Wars, because it's humanizing a lot of aspects of this and glorifying the triumphs of the clones and all of these other things, it's also like it's propaganda. Like it's that part. But that was also a key part of like the merchandising and other things, because all the clone stuff's really freaking cool. They're the best Lego sets. Like they have the clone dropship is, in my opinion, the coolest thing in Star Wars, with the possible exception of the Naboo fighter. I like that's what it is for me.
Yeah. I love the LAAT gunship. That's like one of my favorite ships of all time. It's iconic as shit. I love it.
And it's also supposed to be a Black Hawk helicopter, and there's a whole lot of baggage to that particular vehicle. Like,
yeah, absolutely. But to get a little bit of humor, Aiden says that the timeline should be based on the liberation of Lothal. Then it would be LOL.
Seconded.
I support it.
I mean, that barely changes the events of what we know now. You just move things like
couple
up
months,
3 years.
It's all just math.
Is it a year or is it 3 years? I thought
it's the same year. It's the same year.
It's the same year.
It's the same year. It's actually like months.
Well, I mean,
so then you're good.
In Star Wars, there's many different calendars to look from. Like there's the Lothal calendar, there's the Central Republic calendar, CRC, which in like the actual Star Wars timeline, A New Hope takes place in 7,977 CRC. You just add like 6,000 to it.
All right, nerd.
Well, there you go.
So for Podwans, we do lore segments, and I think the first ever lore segment I did was about timelines and calendars, and we were thinking like, what would be a perfect pinpoint for year 0 in Star Wars, like, and we came up with a bunch of different ideas.
LOL.
Yeah. And kind of to circle back kind of to what we're talking about, Order 66, and to again bounce off of what Alan said, is if we're looking at this as like, you know, anti-war or war-focused thing, is this is kind of focusing on wartime atrocities. You know, not to go down a weird list of stuff that the world has done. It is kind of like, imagine certain conflicts within history being, you know, we don't want to ignore the wartime atrocities. We don't want to shut those out from the general public. We should learn about these, but like exploring and glorifying, like, I don't know. Imagine if like Schindler's List had sequels. Like, it would be an incredibly weird thing to explore. There is a cat. Excuse me.
I heard him in the background. I was just like...
So I'm gonna finish this and I'm gonna go feed the cat. But no, it's just like, we understand the wartime atrocity and we understand how important it is, and it is important and respectful to go into it. And what happened was terrible during Order 66. And I think it's great work, like, especially with the Bad Batch, exploring like the trauma from the other side of like, I don't know what I'm doing. I'm very conflicted. I thought we were the good guys, and I don't know if we're the good guys anymore. And like, these are interesting stories to tell, and I think that we're telling, but it's like, these are lessons to be learned, not stories to, you know, embellish and fantasize about.
It's not, and like, I'm sorry, but like the way that specifically Dave Filoni uses it, it feels like, oh, it's order. It feels like, I know, I don't want to say this like lightly, but it does feel at a certain point that it's like supposed to be emotionally, which I know all stories emotionally manipulate an audience, right? But it kind of feels like a cheap way to be like, feel sorry, like, you know, like for these characters. Not saying that I think that the Jedi, especially the living ones, we should explore their Order 66 trauma. I think that Clone War or Rebels did it in a really great way. We did not see Kanan's Order 66. We did see him deal with the fallout of it. We saw him struggling with having to see his master die to having to trust the clones again. And I think that to me is preferred versus let's just see it again. Because what am I like? I'm sorry, but like, what do we at this point? I know that like the Jedi were killed and you either escaped or died. And I know that some people want to know how they escaped, but like for the most part, you can just assume that like they ran away, like or something happened or somebody saved them.
Yeah, I'm right with you on that, Em. And
so I don't understand like why. Sorry, we can't like. It's the same thing with like Reva. Like it was a lot to see, but I don't feel as though we went as deep into like, I mean, we saw the consequences of it, but I feel like we didn't go as deep into her trauma of experiencing that, especially as a child. Also, I will say I am growing extremely uncomfortable with the fact that they keep using children in Order 66. I understand that was the thing from the prequels, but the past 3 times we've seen it, it's been with a child. And with everything going on in our real world, to put that oftentimes without some sort of warning, I know they added one to Kenobi, is a little like, I think, not like, I just feel like that should be a discussion. Like I think there needs to be a discussion about if you're going to continue to show children in a school environment going through a lot of violence, we have to consider like the warnings that we might want to put on that media of the effect that might have on the audience, especially like, you know, people my age who might have had to experience things like that in school or like through just like the
people
media.
My age.
Yeah.
So
I turned 40 last year. Columbine happened when I was a sophomore.
So that's one thing I remember
shit
talking
changed.
That's something.
Sorry,
no, you're good. That's something I remember talking about prior to us getting the rise of Kylo Ren, when they were talking about how like all we knew based on the information we got from Han in The Force Awakens was that, you know, Kylo Ren, you know, destroyed the temple. And so to me at that point I was 21 or 22.
Yeah, that'd
like
be right.
Sandy Hook happened a couple years prior. You know, like I remember Virginia Tech, and
I was a senior when Virginia Tech happened.
Yeah, I was in middle school, and I remember going through active shooter drills because of that. And you know, like fire drill, tornado drill, active shooter drill.
Active shooter. I lived right by Columbine. That was the high school I would have gone to
Oh
had
my
I
God.
not moved.
Everybody, hi JJ.
Hi,
Hi,
JJ.
JJ. As we're going on this, I was on a bike.
Phone.
Yeah.
I'm sorry.
I was on a bike ride going to Boston from New York, and we stopped at this random restaurant in Connecticut that was like next to where Sandy Hook was. They've demolished the school at this point, but we were like, they're like, "Oh, were you guys here to see the memorial?" And we're like, "Pardon?
Excuse me.
Pardon? What memorial? What something good happened? I hope."
Oh, No, go ahead, Chris.
It's just something that I don't know if they take into consideration, because really, unlike at this point, like I am fine if we don't get Order 66 scenes anymore, but I'd rather get them from perspectives that we haven't seen. You know, like we don't necessarily need to see the temple again. Like with Grogu, like if I want to see like who rescued him and how he, like if you're going to explore how he got from the Jedi Temple to where we find him in Mandalorian season 1, episode 1, because Luke unlocked those memories in the Book of Boba Fett.
And set up whoever it was that rescued him. Like, that's a missing piece of the story that's relevant.
Right. That's completely fine. You know, seeing maybe like an older like Jedi that became an Inquisitor, and seeing how like what did you do during Order 66 that led you to the dark side. Because that didn't happen with a lot of Jedi that we have seen at this point. So how did that happen? The Grand Inquisitor, for example. So there are different situations. Like I think they did explore, not because the Inquisitors didn't exist, but they did. Like there was it was Plo Koon's niece in Legends, who had she had returned to the temple, and she had been set on an assignment to try and look into who the second Sith was. And so she was in the temple and she was looking into like some of the artifacts, and like the Force kind of overwhelmed her, and she like just took a nap in the middle of the library and wakes up in the middle of Order 66 enough to see
that was Shah Kun, right? Shah Kun?
Yeah, to see Anakin kill Jocasta Nu, and then she has to escape, and she has like all that knowledge. So, with canon, we have Ahsoka, pretty much a full story of Order 66.
Yep.
Cal is nearly complete.
Yep.
I argue Obi-Wan and Yoda don't have a complete Order 66 because you have so much time missing from when they, leave Kashyyyk and Utapau to when they get to the temple.
But wouldn't you argue that Obi-Wan Kenobi series sort of fills that void after his escape? We know he goes to Tatooine, and that was the end of it.
No. I mean, in between, in Revenge of the Sith, in between going from Utapau
That
to,
one day.
Yeah,
Because
like
in
Ahsoka, we have Order 66 order through all the clones with her being dead.
Season 7, basically.
Yeah.
The entirety builds to it. That's the arc.
Yeah. So just seeing, like, I don't think we really need, for anybody whose perspective we have seen like that full story, but I think we do need to explore people that were affected differently. They don't have to be children.
No, yeah, absolutely.
I was just gonna say that, like with Grogu, that is a baby-coded character. Yeah, he's 50 in whatever species age you want to put, but that's a baby-coded
But because
character.
of how he ages, he's
right,
a baby.
Right, exactly. Like his memories are never going to be reliable. You know what I mean? Like you're not going to piece a whole story based on what he saw. You don't know he doesn't know what he saw. He's a child. Like that's why I'm like, Order 66 to me is just at this point emotional manipulation to sort of draw up strong emotions out of Star Wars fans. It's our inability to move past this event. I swear to God, we can't do anything post sequels. Now, thankfully, we get an Acolyte, some High Republic stuff. Now we're just stuck in this endless loop of just reliving this traumatic event over and over and over again. Like, I don't know.
Yeah, I'm right with you, JJ, on that one because
unless it's not Order 66.
It could be not Order 66. But the other thing is that I can see where you're coming from, JJ. But like here's the thing, like Kris said it perfectly. Like it's narratively, like the way that they've like when it's used story wise, it's used for the purpose of telling the story. Like for Obi-Wan Kenobi, for example, that's the backstory of Reba. Like that's necessary. It's not like they're throwing it.
Not disagreeing. That was perfectly handled because it's sort of a character narrative and an arc for a brand new character.
Yeah, exactly. No, like Boba Fett. Like when they used it for Boba Fett, that's
weird.
That's weird. That's strange.
And it overshadows it now because, and I've always said, Mandalorian has never been about Mandalorian. He is literally a supporting character in his own story, and we're seeing that now again with. What's overshadowing our conversation about Mandalorian? Again, the Jedi in the Order 66. It should be about his journey to redeem himself for taking off the helmet and traveling across the galaxy. But now we have to piece Grogu's memories. And according to some people, there's Anakin slicing through the door again. Like, how many times must I watch this man slice children in half? I'm sorry.
So
JJ,
it's like watching. I watched Red Wedding twice because I was watching Bale react. I wasn't even watching.
That was epic, though. That was epic.
I was only watching Bale.
Once is
I did
good.
not watch the scene. Once is fine.
A full screen Bale. That's the experience.
I'm gonna be honest, I haven't actually watched it.
What?
I haven't gotten to it yet.
I've seen parts of it. I have not watched the full thing because I don't want to watch the full thing.
I respect that decision.
I'm not emotional.
JJ, I hate to.
Game of Thrones anymore.
I watched up to season 4 and they killed Tywin. And I was like, well, there's no reason to watch Game of Thrones anymore.
Tywin.
No,
Oh
what
my
I think
God.
about Order 66 is I think it's obviously an important event in the story of Star Wars.
Very.
I think we can continue to explore Order 66, and I think that can happen in a pre and post fashion. We can explore stuff like what happens in the Fives arc from Clone Wars, like the lead up, like people finding out that something's not entirely right, and this is how we get the inhibitor chips. And I think, again, kind of what we said in the very, very beginning of like, it doesn't make it. Cat, please.
He has opinions.
It's like,
He would
Order
like to
66
share.
is so cool. Anakin Skywalker needs to kill more kids. That's what that cat thinks.
I know who
guarantee.
your cat's been
Chase, if I
watching.
was home, that would be
Hey.
me. If I was at my
Hey.
house, this would be me. My cat.
Hey,
would do the same
Chase,
thing.
why is your cat in r/prequel memes?
It's not my cat. It's my roommate's
Where's your
cat. My
cat?
cat is sweet and only wants to watch Star Wars Visions all day.
Oh,
Why is that cat
Very-
watching
very Star Wars
Space
Resistance fan.
Hypothesis?
Oh God, Resistance is the best show.
Love
But
you.
no, I think like again the Fives arc. I think the Bad Batch, like exploring the post realization of Order 66 and like how characters like Crosshair, like, is it the inhibitor chip or are you just a freaking
Fucking asshole.
crazy
You're a
motherfucker?
dipshit. You're a dipshit.
And then what we're getting now with spoilers for season 2, but the stuff with like, hey, Cody, like maybe has the chip, maybe doesn't, but he's like, this is wrong. It is not just soldiers follow orders. Getting stuff with Cal after it and being like, I'm done with this. I could, like, this is ridiculous. It's like,
Perfect.
it's great. It like the pre and post Order 66 is fine. It's worth exploring. We know what happens. The clones went into the temple, opened fire. Anakin went to the temple and started swinging. We
No
know
rush.
what happened.
I agree.
We don't
do,
need to
but
keep
here's-
going back.
But
How many-
here's my response, because I do a lot of Anakin content. No matter how many times we see the atrocities that Anakin commits, there are still people that blame the Jedi for Anakin committing them.
Oh, those
And
are.
that gets wait.
Hold on. Yeah.
But that gets harder and harder to do when people are experiencing stories from the perspective of the victims instead of the perspective of the
Do you think anything honestly changed since we saw him nearly slice Reva and Kenobi? When you get an up close of his face. Do
But
you think
that's
the
but that's
conversation
Vader,
changed
and
since?
people divorce Vader
I
and Anakin.
hate that shit.
It's so annoying.
But they,
Right,
but it's also, but so like if we made a TikTok right now, if any one of us did it and we said Vader is evil, nobody would come into our comments and argue with us. But if we went in
Well,
and
some
made that same
weirdos
video and
might.
say Anakin is evil, then it's a lot more difficult, because some people would perceive Anakin before his fall and be like, well, no, he wasn't evil, but he did do bad things. Whereas like with Vader, because of that line of demarcation. And that's part of the way that people experience the character, not just in terms of like, not like, because some people recognize they're the same person, but like with the way that you talk about them, if you say Anakin, it's before that and all. And so that's part of it. But that's one of the things that in theater, film, whatever, like code is when a character harms animals or children, that is the point where you are supposed to understand as the audience that whatever it was that person could have been. Because like this happens in Macbeth, this happens in all kinds of stuff. Like that's the code for whatever they could have been, whatever the good outcomes were, those are all gone. Like
So
this choice burned that bridge. And like as Star Wars fans, we still haven't. That's still not how we perceive that event.
With Anakin, people have a hindsight is 2020 issue. You watch that character from birth. You watch them be a sweet innocent child. So hindsight is always going to be there. But I don't think that we need to be treated to a massacre every single time so that we have talking points on
Totally
the internet against weirdos. I'm sorry. Like at
No,
some
I
point,
totally
like
agree.
I
I'm
agree.
ready to be away from this era as much as you are. Like we're on the same
Right.
page with that.
right,
I-
it overshadows
want
so
my
much of our
Lando show.
conversation. And you're not gonna get it if we keep getting Order 66 every single fucking time.
So,
Yeah, where was
What was
Land?
Lando
Where was
Lando
Lando
during Order
during
66?
Order 66. He's just flying the Falcon and being like, damn.
Lando's there with the
that
martinis, like,
temple's on
yeah,
fire.
that's fucked up down there.
Man, I'm
He's
getting the
coming
hell
up
out of
with
here.
No!
There's like 4 people.
L3, can you
following
get us out of here? This is nasty.
Some weird shit.
No, L3 was
Messy.
liberating the Jedi's droids during Order 66.
Yeah, she was in the temple. She was like, "Come with me."
No, L3 is like helping all the battle droids, like, run away!
I would watch the shit out of that. I really would.
So
Oh.
I guess
I would,
so
any
the
L3 content I'm in. Any and all
Yeah.
L3 content I'm in.
So I guess the perspectives that I still want from Order 66, like, so I've talked about the Inquisitors. I want other older Jedi Masters that weren't on Coruscant, like that we know survived. Like at some point, you know, like we know Ethkoth like dies in some. Yeah, but like like Opal Rancisis, that is a giant snake man, an old giant snake man. How does he just escape and just go out in the galaxy somewhere? Like,
Because
this
he's
is
sexy.
someone who
You can't get rid of
lived-
sexy characters like that.
I mean, they did in Legends.
Oh,
But like,
Jesus.
like how
I killed
he-
Cassian Andor. That's a false fact. Get rid of sexy people like that.
You
Points
can
were
mark
made.
sexy
Points were made.
characters. You can't kill sexy characters.
You absolutely cannot.
but they but no, like, and I think his perspective would be interesting because besides Yoda, he's the only one that was alive during the High Republic and lived post Order 66. So what is his perspective going from the golden age of the Jedi through the fall of the Jedi, fall of the Republic, and how does he go about the Empire? That's a perspective that I would want, because all we have is really Kenobi, because we don't really get all that much into Yoda post Orders. I mean, granted, we don't really have a lot of Yoda during anything. But
Yeah.
Oh yeah, exactly. Yeah, he's just the character that we
Is
don't
there-
know anything about.
But like,
So
have you guys
let's-
noticed that
go ahead.
nobody ever actually talks about Order 66 and any of the Star Wars properties? Nobody's actually saying it.
What?
To what actually happened,
So
and they're not having conversations about it at all. Maybe in the Bad Batch, now that we have their perspective. and
in
with
Rebels.
the-
Well,
Yeah,
in Rebels
Rebels.
they talk
Kinda
about
Yeah,
it.
that's
They
true.
talk about it a
Kinda
little
came
bit, but like from a story standpoint. So from a story standpoint, you also have to remember that the Empire was literally erasing all records of the Jedi. Everything that was ever brought up after Order 66 was deleted. Like that, there was no knowledge of the. If you weren't alive during that time period, you wouldn't know what a Jedi is. You would think that they, just like how Luke says it in A New Hope, that it's a like Owen Lars says, it's a hokey religion. It's not real. You know what I mean? So that's also how I look at Order 66. Is like, if you look from it at it, and I look at it from a story standpoint, right?
Okay.
That's I when I watch Star Wars, it's all story based. Like I take my reality head off, and I'm watching what is in the universe. You know what I mean?
You have to accept the meta, otherwise it doesn't. Like
Exactly,
the
yeah,
pieces
you
do
look-
not fit together well enough to ignore the meta.
And my thing is that, so in this trailer, we watched it. We also have to remember, and Bale brought this up in a conversation that we had a little bit a while ago in a different medium, and he was like, realistically, that in that trailer, it was what, 2 seconds? We didn't really see much. All we saw were older Jedi, and we get, and it's intercut with Grogu's face. You know what I mean? So we don't really know what exactly we're getting. We all are thinking
We have
Order
no
66.
context for the scene at all. Like, that's,
And I mean,
It's very similar to the Boba Fett one, though.
yeah, it is.
Very
But like,
similar.
and the other thing is like, narratively, we have these questions. How did Grogu get
100%.
and it fit, and I feel like that's why I don't have as much problem with it bringing it into Mando, because it is essential to Grogu, which I think Grogu's going to end up taking over Din's spot. He's going to be the Mandalorian. They're going to have Grogu be the Mandalorian.
Highlight
As soon
the
as
most
I
recent comment. Whoever can do that.
Which
Interesting.
The Corellia copy works on that.
It could be
This
Grogu's
is what I am
dad.
choosing. This is what I am choosing to believe.
Jedi
Yes!
Temple
By-
care.
by happy temple memories, you mean
That's
like
a
happy
perfect
tree
comment.
friends?
Happy.
Why am I imagining like the robot chicken one?
Chris, do not wreck this for me. You need a Star Wars with a happy ending, for fuck's sake, man. Like, we don't have one. I have not had a Star Wars with a happy ending since I was like
Return of the Jedi.
10 years old. Like,
Resistance has a happy ending.
Yes, it does.
Resistance has a happy ending. That is true.
Finn's not in
Still
Resistance,
not gonna
so
get
it's
me to
not a
watch that.
happy
Not
ending.
even.
God, Resistance is the best animated show. It really is.
Facts.
So I guess for me, ever since I saw, I can't remember their name I retweeted them on Twitter when they said it, but that was the retrieval of the Dark Saber mission. Like,
Yeah.
I want
Yes.
that.
That would be really cool.
Above finding out who rescued Grogu, even if, well, not if it's Quinlan Boss. If it's Quinlan Boss, I want to see Quinlan. Like, I'm gonna be
It's
honest.
Barris.
We need
It's
to
Barris.
say that.
I think it's Barris.
I'll tell him
I
in
can't-
March,
I
we
would-
need a Star Wars Zuko so fucking bad.
Barris Sophie, this is her redemption arc. I'm staking my money on it.
Fingers crossed.
I mean, I'm down with that.
I don't know if
too,
I want
as
David
long
John
as-
to write John Favreau to write Barris, though. I'm sorry.
No,
Yeah,
you're
I'm
right.
with you
You're
there.
right.
Yeah.
I'm 100% with you.
I love it.
I
I
love-
would love to see more Barris, but
I
They're
don't
never
want
gonna
Filoni or
give
Favreau to be
women
in
to
charge of
write
writing a
any
complex
Clone
woman
Wars
character.
material. They're never gonna do it. They're just gonna put them in director spots and call it feminism, but they're not gonna
Yeah.
get them to actually write text and dialogue.
You know what? They're probably
would Bryce
saying,
Dallas
what was
Howard
the...
direct Barris beautifully? Yes, I'm sure, but
100%.
she could
The
only do
script
so
still
much
has to
with
be
the
written by
script.
somebody.
Yeah.
The script. Who's writing the script? That's what I care about.
Well,
I got like 5 minutes. I got to go do bedtime and story.
Yeah, I'm not. I am house full of guests, so I can't
no,
stay much
yeah,
longer
you
either.
guys,
No, no, no.
yeah,
I
absolutely.
mean, since y'all are gonna go soon, if y'all have any, closing thoughts, anything you want to say about it?
Go, JJ.
Okay, I'll say one thing. If we're gonna keep having Order 66, I don't have a problem being a background sort of a suggestion. It's happening. I don't need to see kids getting slashed. I don't need kids being terrified. I don't need kids being chased. I don't need Jedi to die. I've seen enough Jedi die for the rest of my effing life. Like suggested. I think art of suggestion should still be a thing, especially if you're going to use Order 66 as a way to tell a story, which Grogu's rescued. That's a huge narrative that supports Order 66, and I'm down for it.
Absolutely.
I just have an issue with it, just how much we get. It's oversaturating this entire universe that we cannot move past it. What are our discussions all the time? Either defending or criticizing Anakin, supporting Rey in the sequels. It's all these same conversations that we keep having. We just cannot move past some of these events. And Order 66 is not a defining point of Star Wars. Like you guys said it the best. Rebellion was. That was it. So I don't know. I'm just tired of seeing kids being chased down. It comes down to it. I'm becoming desensitized to it. So that's all I got to say on that.
Yeah, I got desensitized in 2005 when I marched on the temple, or in the Revenge of the Sith game where I took down Central and Sarah. It was back to back.
Yeah. Well, that game came out a month before the movie, actually.
Yeah,
released.
the Revenge of the Sith video game came out a month before the
That's
movie, and not
terrifying.
everything is exactly like the film, but
It's pretty close.
yeah, you got the plot.
You got
I
all
think-
of the plot pretty much.
I still think the worst death in that game is not Syndraulic. It's Jocasta Nu when Anakin force grabs her and stabs her with a
just, like, grabs
lightsaber.
her.
That
I'm
is
like,
horrifying.
As a kid, I'm like,
You're like, what the hell?
Wait, Anakin, no.
what?
This was also like the PS2 era of video games where like the writers and editors could get away with anything.
Yes. And then you get the weird graphical change because they'll put the actual like scenes from the movie and then it'll go to like PS2 graphics and then it'll go to the game.
So good. If you want to wild time, play a game called God Hand, and it's a great game. You're like, oh my god, this came out.
Oh,
I don't mean to interrupt. I gotta run, you guys.
Thanks, JJ.
Goodbye, JJ.
Thank
It was nice
talking to
Thank
you.
you.
Go follow JJ
Hi,
on
JJ.
all of the social medias.
Thank you. We'll talk more about this in the future, I'm sure.
This might be like
we'll get a couple of
segment
weeks
thing.
of content out of all of this.
Yeah. We'll talk to you later. All right, Alan.
Yeah.
your turn.
So the one thing that I gotta say is the event of Order 66 itself is now becoming redundant as a method of emotional conflict. Like back then, at one point, Order 66 was treated as I can't watch. I'm sorry, I'm not watching it. But now some fans are like, hell yeah, more Anakin, which is completely what you not should be looking forward to when you look at
those
that.
people so
I
sad.
still can't even watch Order 66 at some points.
And I
It's
love
just-
Anakin
it's just
Skywalker.
way
I
too
just don't wanna
hard.
See that. I don't
But
wanna see
knowing in the back of my head that there are fans out there that are excited about someone doing mass genocide, it hurts my head.
I
Like,
remember-
seriously.
There are
remember
people
Attack
that
on
want a Darth
Titan.
Vader movie that's basically just Friday the 13th, except with Vader.
And this is my thing with Order 66 as well. They keep putting it in. I don't think the fandom handles Order 66 well. I made a video that I said I don't like Order 66 jokes. One, I think they're way overused. Two, at this point, the way that we've seen it, especially since, like I said, the last 3 times have been with children, I don't find the jokes funny anymore. I don't find
I never
younglings
did.
Sayer
No.
jokes funny. I never did, but yeah, but I don't find them funny. And I just think that like it's like a certain part of the fandom is cannot emotionally handle this beat, because what the writers are trying to do is be like, this is a very serious thing. And we have become so and certain parts of the fandom have become so desensitized to it that they now see it as a joke thing. And then in my opinion, that also doesn't help the narrative. Like it just like, I think especially after Kenobi, both that didn't help, but like seeing that and hearing what Reva had to do to live through Order 66.
Yeah, I was
right
actually
after Uvalde, it's not funny. It's not
Yeah.
funny. I don't want to hear your I hate children like Anakin jokes.
Yeah,
and that's
I was-
part of why I'm like, we need to move on from Order 66.
I was actually rewatching episode 5 of Kenobi before I left work today, and I just remember her, Reva, and Obi-Wan right by the door, and she was saying, I had to play dead and lie in the bodies while they were going cold, and I'm like, stop making jokes about this, please. Like, it is the way people are taking it and are like so excited about seeing it. It's so wrong.
I remember that being a discourse in the fandom. Like, I remember like when it happened, I was just like, great, we appeased those fans that wanted to see Anakin murder children. I did not need to see this.
I think, and this is kind of like going off kind of more at what we were talking about earlier, is I do think one of the worst things to happen to Anakin was the Clone Wars. I think the Clone Wars humanizes
Feed
Anakin
your wife, man.
so
Feed your
much.
wife. Happy wife, happy life.
Please,
do not
please
jump
feed
Spouse,
Mrs.
happy
Chaco.
house, Luke. It's
Oh,
2023.
Sorry.
But no, like I think what the Clone Wars does is it makes Anakin this really cool dude. He's Sky Guy in the Clone Wars. And he's not that in episode 1 and 2. He's the little boy who races pod racers, and he's the emotionally awkward, creepy wannabe boyfriend in episode 2, which is like, hey, this is an interesting arc. Let's see where it goes. And then he goes to become like a super suave, super confident, super cool guy that a lot of young kids will relate to, compared to what he is in episode 1 and 2. He's like
That's not a high bar.
Yeah.
Suave, but
yeah. But like, it's just all these kids grew with Anakin, and it's just like, because he's such a cool dude, and again, he's Sky Guy in the Clone Wars.
Well, but let's take this into, because, and again, I can bridge this into being able to tap out because I got to go read books for my own kids. But so Anakin is on the path of radicalization that many adolescent young men within the fandom are also on. And so and this is why, like, I've started yesterday, and oh my god, but talking about Anakin through the lens of Anakin made choices, they were bad choices. There are always people that come into the comment section and then say, no, but the Jedi think. And so I decided yesterday, all right, fine. Nobody is doing the Palpatine is a groomer and a child predator content. I'm going to start doing that. And so then you get to take the blame off of Anakin, because that's the thing people are emotionally invested in doing. Because if Anakin's a villain and I empathize with all of these feelings that he's having and these struggles that he's having, that means I might be a villain. I'm not okay with that. And so I need to make an excuse for why it's not Anakin. And so we put it on Palpatine. But Palpatine is the figure in the stories that's telling Anakin all of the things that some of these emotionally kind of repressed people are feeling, which is that, like, these things should be theirs. They need to be able to feel sad and angry, but they're feeling ashamed of those things that they can't express them, because Anakin is listening to this character that is feeding into his ego and his insecurity. And those are all feelings that they are struggling with, that they don't know how to communicate either.
Yeah.
And so they see the Jedi talking to Anakin about processing those feelings as the people in their lives that won't get off their back. And if they just didn't have these people in their lives doing that to them, they would be okay. They'd be managing all of this stuff fine. If people would just not expect them to be emotionally competent, then et cetera, right?
No, Alan, you are spot on.
And that's why that's forever going to be in the fandom. And we are also forever going to have it in our fandom, because, like, we are always going to accumulate people that are adolescent that feel out of place that are really good targets for that type of grooming.
Unfortunately.
And there are lots of other fandoms that have it as well, video games and whatever. Like take your pick.
Yeah, you're
It's always
spot
gonna be
on. You're spot on, Alan.
Yep.
Nice.
Uh,
I mean, everything that you said was true there. I mean, it's just the way people depict the event. Like,
Oh
there
yeah,
the things that happen. It's all a matter of perspective. You can be those people that merge the two characters together. Whatever, that's your prerogative. Me, I separate the two. I once thought years ago that they were the same, but then I started to understand the conflict between Anakin as a separate character, and I'm like, okay, Anakin does have problems that do coexist with Vader. So everyone that's trying to defend Anakin and say, oh no, they're separate, it's because of the idea that Anakin's always had these types of problems. Like they never just sprouted up.
Yeah, it's
like,
not.
We
It's
see
not.
this in
It's,
episode 2 with the Tuskens. He's always had this type of animosity and frustration towards the people that never looked out for him or never supported him and took everything from him. He always had that revenge within him, no matter what. So it's, I mean, in some aspects, seeing what he did to the Tuskens and then Order 66, it's not really like a crazy thing. Like the Jedi should have foresaw this. Like they were aware, because Yoda was like, forgetting this. He's talking about a dark path that we're going to be following with this.
Yeah, the Clone
And
Wars
we
in
should-
season 6.
Yeah, and they still do it despite knowing the risks that are at play. And Anakin has always had these issues, but for the fans to be like, oh yeah, that wasn't Anakin's fault. Anakin wasn't doing this. It was Vader.
oh, don't get. That might be a whole conversation in and of its own.
That could be in a different discussion.
No,
That's a
gonna be in
different
I'm
law.
sure, yeah.
No, that's a different discussion. And my God, I
We'll slam my head into a table.
Yeah.
I have so many thoughts on Anakin Skywalker. It's not funny.
I feel like everybody does. But back onto the idea that of Order 66's usage, I wish that we could see more Order 66, not from the aspect of like clones shooting the Jedi. I wish it was more like groups escaping the temple or escaping
Yeah,
places. Very similar to
making
how
making it kind of
like,
like
similar to how
a-
Kanan escaped.
Yeah.
Like a little story like that, where it's not so much pew pew pew, but more of, yeah, we gotta go, we gotta move. But I mean, I guess people just like death. It's very weird and it's unsettling. But
I don't know
that's
if we
what
need
some
like
fans like.
escape scenes from the temple, or
I mean,
know,
like in
another-
Cal for Fallen Order,
yeah.
that was
another bad batch of, with Caleb and Depa Balaba. Like, we don't need any. I don't think we need anything of that, like right after it happened or during it. It's just like we can definitely go into a young Jedi that goes into hiding and is found. We can go into clones that we can go into like Return of the Jedi or post Return of the Jedi era where the clones are old, and like we can see like we can explore like PTSD of Order 66 from their point of view. We can go into the Separatists. We can go into the government cover up of like, no, what do you mean the Jedi were slaughtered? They were traitors to your state. Like from the Separatists, it's like, oh no, the Galactic Empire makes sense because like we always knew the Jedi were evil. They were our enemies. And then Senator Palpatine knew that too. Like we can go into those stories and
Or
we
like
can
the
explore
individual
Order 66 that
planets
way.
and like what happened there, and like what
a whole
allegiances
deep
they
dive
have.
into the propaganda from.
Well, and I feel like they touched on it in episode 3 of the Bad Batch. Like when she's holding that guy hostage, she says Dooku was ultimately right. Like it did, the Republic did, and it was corrupt, and it didn't turn into the Empire. And he's in, and from a certain point of view, absolutely, that I mean that's what happened. But I find, and I totally agree with you, Chase. I think we need Order 66 from a different perspective that has nothing to do with the Jedi or the clones.
Yeah,
I think the average like citizen of the Republic, how are those people going to react?
The Martez
to-
sisters watching the temple on fire
Exactly.
from where they
Yes.
were.
I've made jokes about this, but Cyril has clone action figures. So in my mind,
Yeah, that's right.
it's
He is alive in
entirely
that.
possible that he had Jedi action figures that his mother, when they switched, took away from him because, you know,
Yeah,
they wanted to get rid of that. They didn't want to be associated with that.
that's on
But
par
he gets
for
to
her.
keep the clone troopers because like they're considered in line
Mhm.
with the Empire.
Cyril's
But, like,
mom, I don't want you to play
let
with
you
this
play with this
anymore.
But like
Drops
stuff
it.
like that, there were probably children who liked the Jedi and were interested in them, and their
Yeah,
parents had to say no, like we can't, like, if for your own safety, for our own safety, we can't be doing that anymore. Kids who found sticks and were playing lightsaber battle that their parents
Yeah,
had to come and go no.
That's interesting because I mean, if you have like a parallel universe where you put yourself into in Cyril's position, and that time comes when you're a resident on Coruscant, and this happens, your parents just come in your room and say, "Do you have any Jedi action figures?"
You see the temple burning.
Dumpster. I'm like,
Right.
You maybe saw Jedi that used to like walk around like.
Yeah, I mean,
And
when
then-
you're a kid, like if you put yourself in that position, you're a kid and you don't understand why, like why your parents throwing out all these Jedi action figures and why they're seen as the foes of this. And because I mean, when you're a kid, you don't really understand much.
Okay, Haley makes a great point.
If anyone has heard
Because
Beings of the Galaxy's episode of the Jedi's
Jedi Mother,
they do that. They do that.
See, they
so
should have a
well.
perspective of Jedis, of the families of the Jedis that have given them up. Think about that. Think about that emotionally. Like like you don't have to see anything, but you can hear reports of families that had, like, you could do one that they just had dropped off, or like they had just, like, their child was just being discovered by the Jedi. And then
Well, I mean, we do get a little bit of a glimpse of it in Clone Wars with that when Obi-Wan goes to Rhodia to save that kid from Cad Bane.
Cad Bane, yeah.
Or in
'cause, I mean-
Rebels when they're rescuing the younglings from the Inquisitors.
Yeah. Because I mean, because the lady was like, "Oh yeah, the Jedi are bad," because they were manipulating the mother, and because I mean, I'm sure Palpatine just did that to everybody, just convinced them that the Jedi are evil, they're vicious, they don't care about the people, and yeah, I digress. Chase, go ahead.
I mean, kind of to bounce off of what Emily and Haley were kind of saying is these outside perspectives. I think we can also draw parallels to the real world of like the transition of American exceptionalism going from World War II to the Vietnam War to today, where basically we have World War II. That's the Clone Wars. Everything's great. America's amazing. The clones and the Jedi are great. And it's like, ooh, maybe the military is not so good. That's the Vietnam War. That's the Jedi aren't so good. And then now with the Bad Batch, we're starting to see the like, we don't actually need the clones. The clones aren't so great either.
Yeah,
the Empire is great. And then we get into the modern era and Gulf War, and we start to see that, oh, America itself can be a little bit corrupt. And that's when we get into the, oh, how far does it go from one person being like, you know, we have like in Lost Stars where it's like, how far down the rabbit hole do you go of supporting the Empire or supporting, you know, what was good about the Republic? It's like, it wasn't that the Jedi or the clones were inherently evil. It's just they were
deceived.
They were deceived. Yeah. And I think we can get that. We can have that average everyday person perspective of someone that goes down that rabbit hole, both sides. And because it's like, it is like you said, like Cyril has toys of clones and other people do. Like there was propaganda on both sides. We see it in the Clone Wars. We see it everywhere. And it's like, it didn't go away overnight.
Right. And like one of my favorite depictions, obviously it's not canon, but like I really like the idea that Mike Chen put out of like the 2003 Clone Wars is like the Republic propaganda of like the Jedi are heroes. Look at these heroification of the Jedi and the clones and like how that represents. And then again, speaking of Lost Stars, that's one of my favorite depictions of like the Clone Wars of like the ISB of them learning about how Mace Windu interrupted the peaceful execution on Geonosis and like how Palpatine tries to spin that. Again, like those are my favorite type of stories.
Yeah, and it's so funny because it's like you hear that and you're like, that's not how that happened. And Anakin was there. Interesting. Another way of getting rid of Skywalker, Palpatine. Good job. But
you know what would be an amazing story though for like post Order 66, like Republic citizens, is them assimilating to the Imperial culture.
Well, we see
Is
that
them-
a little bit in Bad Batch.
Season 1, yeah,
we
with
do.
the
With
change.
And
Little
Lost
Change.
Stars.
like
And
the
Lost
people,
Stars.
like that's the statue of Palpatine that's being built that eventually gets taken down in Return of the Jedi, and
Yeah.
how the people like reacted to that shift, and what they did on the side as to like if there were like any rebellious people and what they would face in terms of going against the Empire. I think that it would be a very good story to tell, because what if there were citizens that were involved with Order 66?
Well, you did have
if
citizens
someone
at
like
the
Bail
Jedi
Organa,
Temple.
like
Yeah.
if Bail Organa like did something about it, like things like that.
No, but Chris, you were saying something.
You know what post Order 66 story I want? A group of clones led by Rex to go and try and take down Vader, because Vader is the one that killed all the Jedi, killed Skywalker, and then Rex learns that Vader is Anakin. And that's why he goes to go retire and hunt Jalupas on that one planet.
But I feel like
Because he can't bring himself to kill Vader.
that would be a good reason, but I feel like that's not where they're going to go to, because I always was under the impression that Rex never
absolutely
knew.
not.
Yeah,
Nope,
absolutely not.
not until we get that Return of the Jedi,
Jedi.
Fact later this year, and Luke and Rex have a conversation.
Oh, that's going to
I
be the
can't
best,
wait.
one of the best stories in that book that happens.
I can't wait.
But yeah,
But-
I mean, kind of. I don't want to say devil's advocate, but kind of to go back. I mean, I do think there are stories that can hold even during Order 66, even still, that can have good emotional weight. As much as I know, I've talked to I think a lot of you like individually about my problems with the Siege of Mandalore and Ahsoka. In general, the scene with Ahsoka and Rex during Order 66 is probably one of the most impactful things I've ever seen in Star Wars. Like just pulling the helmet off of Rex and seeing him cry. Like it's like the amount of edits on TikTok of that alone is like, it's like, I don't need this today. I hate this. But I think we can do it. And I think that was done. I don't want to say all of Siege of Mandalore was done tastefully and done well with continuity. It wasn't. I'll be the first to admit it, but I do think there is a good story to tell. There is emotional weight and represent, and it doesn't revolve around gunning down Jedi. It can have those stories. We can have those stories told, and they can be meaningful and effective. And I think you got to be careful with it. I mean, it's like I remember kind of going back to what I said earlier. It's like we don't have a sequel to Schindler's List for a reason. Like we don't have a lot of movies about those things. We don't oversaturate the market with movies around atrocities. They exist. They're usually very well done, very well cared for. And it's not done for the sake of, oh man, isn't it cool when someone opens fire on these people? It's like, no, it's not cool. That's the point. And it's meant to drive something home. It's not about the Jedi shoot fest. And I think that's what I think a lot of people do want. And I think there are content creators out there that are perpetuating that
Absolutely.
out there.
Yeah.
And I think that's why a story about that really delves into sort of the emotional trauma and healing that a Jedi would have to go through after experiencing something like that could be really effective, because I think it's a way to ground it again, to say this had a deep impact. And I also think, generally when we just look at, the stories that Star Wars tell and how it can help people in the real world, having a survivor's narrative like that, and it fitting into the overall agenda of hope of you can suffer, or you might go through terrible things, you might suffer something, but you can survive, and you can rebuild, and you can heal, and maybe it will never be gone, it'll always be a part of you, but there are ways in which you can get better. Would be really impactful. And I think, and like I said, I think Rebels did it a little bit with Kanan, but I think with every other Jedi, there's a lot of potential for that, especially I think Jedi who did survive it as when they were not Grogu, baby, but Padawans, who Kanan might have had to see, whose masters maybe died to protect them, Cal, who maybe weren't with their masters at that time, so they don't know what happened to them. I think that could be a really compelling story in a way which, you know, we don't have to see Order 66 again, but we can see the fallout of it. And I think that is maybe where, like, I think what we're saying is, like, we just want to see the shift from it actually being on screen to let's see what the fallout is on those who experienced it.
To that point, one thing that could be interesting, like when you said like a Padawan that was away from their master, like imagine like a few days goes by and a Padawan comes back and the chip's no longer activated, at least, you know, like as far as we can tell with like some of the clones we've spent up close and personal on, Bad Batch being a different kind of breed, because at least we see with Jesse, even, you know, like a few hours after it's been called, he's aware enough to consider what's going on. Like, what do the clones do in that situation? You know,
like what Cody does in Bad Batch.
Right. Like, you know, what, and that's more from the clone's perspective. But, you know, like that's an interesting perspective to explore, which is something we didn't get in Legends. We got a lot of Jedi's perspective. We didn't get the clones because besides like 3 of them, they didn't really have personalities besides being good soldiers, follow orders. Shout out to Commander Faye. So I think, yeah, I don't think we need to see the temple side of Order 66 ever again. I think if it could be individual with some of the older Jedi, where you have that perspective of basically an Obi-Wan Kenobi story of what do you do when you've lost that family, that structure. How do you go about it? Like, you know, we know Eastcoff became a priest. Okay, that's his way of giving back to the galaxy in a way that's no longer being a Jedi. How do other Jedi cope with that?
Cal trying to restore the order and that kind of stuff.
Yeah. And then, or I wonder too, like, did any of them, especially since this is being explored in the High Republic more, you know, did any of them try to go to other kind of Force believer systems and hide with them, knowing that they might be able to gain sympathy from them? Right. Did any of them, you know, go to, like, say, the Guardians of the Wills and ask for their protection? And I think that could be especially, like, even interesting because, you know, Bay says there are no Jedi here anymore, which I know Jedha was at one point a really big, that could just be like general, but it would also be interesting to consider, like, what if there were, you know, Jedi who hid in the Wills and were eventually discovered or had to move on because they feared discovery and didn't want that to come back on all of them.
And I feel like you could definitely look at that and put that in a Path show. I bet Jedha at one point was like maybe towards the beginning, like let's put a date on it. Like let's say like a couple of months after Revenge of the Sith. Jedha is a hot spring of just like that's where you go. Like all the Jedi are there. And that's where the path starts. Like eventually it starts in Jedha and then it becomes too big.
Like Quinlan tried to show up there.
Exactly.
And
yes.
like
Like all these Jedi have, besides obviously Obi-Wan and Yoda, because narratively you can't really do that.
Yeah.
You can't really do that with those two characters. But like giving these Jedi where the path begins, because we don't really know much about the path. And I feel like that's something that I feel like if you want more Jedi stories in that era, you could do the path. Just do the path. Do the path of.
Give me the Quinlan Riva show. It's right there.
Yes, exactly. Yeah, exactly. Just exactly.
Or put it in Survivor.
No, yeah, exactly.
The one,
Survivor
I mean,
well.
kind of good to go off of that is I think it would be interesting, like Emily said, like, you know, where Jedi go to other people who would have sympathy, and then also the Empire like raining down on these religious, you know, that literally have no connection to the Jedi themselves, but there is like just that like little dangle of like, oh, but you believe in the Force and we can't have that anymore. I also think like exploring before Order 66, right? Like, because we definitely get it in the Clone Wars and we get it a little bit in the Bad Batch, but I think, you know, having stuff like, I remember people talking about this a while back, is that, you know, when Jedi Fallen Order was coming out, and like another Jedi that survived Order 66, and like people saying every time a Jedi survives, it takes away from the impact of Order 66. And and I don't necessarily agree or disagree with that, but I also would like more context to that. Like, I love a good forbidden lover story of like someone who was in love with a Jedi on Coruscant and got wind of what was about to happen and got them out. And was like, you need to leave the temple within the week, and we can't tell anyone or it'll screw everything up. And then the plans will because the Republic's plans will change, and getting them out of there before that, and then that Jedi having to deal with the trauma of like, I abandoned my friends, but it was the only way to save myself, and it was the only way to save the person I cared about. Like stories like that before Order 66 happening.
I do, when people say like that the more Jedi that survive, it lessens the like the impact of Order 66. If they are a Legends fan, I find it hypocritical.
Also, I don't really understand how people realistically thought only like 3 people survived Order 66. Like, I'm sorry, that's kind of on you.
Because even like both in Legends and in canon, when you know like Vader's trying to hunt down like remaining Jedi, and Palpatine's was like, okay, so like 10 survived. Who cares? They're not a threat to us. You know, Palpatine was on to bigger and better things, and Vader was just in his petty revenge mode trying to find Kenobi. But you know, I think that when you have around 10,000 Jedi and let's say 100 survive, Palpatine and Vader succeeded. Like,
what do you think if you were to make
scared them enough, they're not going to reorganize.
No, you can see that.
They can't even reorganize.
Yeah. No, you see that in Kenobi. Like when that lone Jedi shows up and goes, "We have to fight back," and Obi-Wan straight up says, "The war's over. Like we're done fighting. Like that. There's no coming back from this."
Right, and
one of my lightsaber and buried it into the ground.
One of my favorite scenes in Rebels is Yoda talking to Ezra and telling him to go to Malachor, and he's like, "Look, there are 10,000 of us. I screwed up, and we all died."
Yeah,
just like just a ballpark. How many Jedi do you think survived?
I'd say 100. I think 100.
10,000.
I would say 80.
I think we're.
I would not put it that low.
I think
put it 100.
I think we're in the 50 to 100 range. Like in the Darth Vader comic, there, I think that list is like 20-ish, and that's just the ones they know. And obviously, there were, you know, there could have been Padawans that survived, and people that were on the Barash vow.
I'd be confident saying low 100s.
Yeah, like not everyone was also maybe not been in a place, because like I have to assume, like even though it was like the Clone Wars, I have to assume they still had some Jedi in like the temples that they describe in like the High Republic that were like tending to them, had a Padawan. So they might not, and if they didn't have clones, they might not have even known until maybe they got Obi-Wan's message that said like, do not come back to the temple, like do not trust.
Well, and also think about Cal's what's her name?
Seer.
Yeah, Seer, her master. He was off doing excavation shit during the Clone Wars. Like there's Jedi that are doing that, and I mean Jocasta Nu is also.
You get the one in the Vader comics with when Vader gets his kyber crystal, who's to have it Vader's vow, and he's hiding off on a planet, and Vader has to go kill him.
Kira Infla.
Yeah. So I mean, there's a lot of ways that you can.
Yeah, Kenny said 25%. I think that's a little bit too much. But I mean,
or like 10%.
Also, I will
10 or less percent. I think is a devastating blow and obliteration of the Jedi. And I do think like at some point, like I don't think we'll ever get to that many stories. But like if it's like, oh, this Jedi survived, it is like I think the point that people try to make is like at some point we make it where it was more of an attack on the Jedi than a destruction of the Jedi.
And I will say this. And I kind of contradict myself when I think about it now, but I used to think like, okay, if we have all these Jedi, right? Why in the fuck didn't they just like after the Death Star blew up, the first one, and they heard the name Skywalker, they're like, huh, heard that name before.
Well,
you don't think they would have joined up?
It depends on how old they are. So like I know in Legends, because we don't really have a lot of information on Luke's temple. Luke's one of the 2 or 3 of the Jedi Council members on Luke's High Council were Tarasa and Crook, who were both from the Republic. Their just species are able to live a long time, and like we don't ever get any real answers as to what they were doing during the rebellion. But when it came time to like the Empire's defeated, a new Jedi Order is back, they came out of hibernation essentially, and we're just like, yeah, I'm ready to do it. So they could have been in that position because, you know, to take down the Empire, you have to start a war, you have to go on the offensive. You're not in a position to just defend people when like you could when you are under the umbrella of the Republic. So if any older Jedi realized where they went wrong, that's why they just stayed where they were.
Yeah, right on the money. Fair. And then, I mean, when you think about the Republic, yeah, they were defending the people. But for the rebellion, you have to sacrifice everything to overthrow the Empire. Everything. Your life, your friends, your family, everything.
I mean, if you watch... No, go ahead, Em.
Well, no, because like that's why, like, I mean, the idea of why didn't the Jedi join is the same of why didn't any other person who didn't join the rebellion join.
No, that's fair.
Yeah, like what Char was saying, you have to give up everything. Your life might be okay under the Empire. We've seen like the Princess and the Scoundrel, how some people, especially those who are rich, like it honestly does not matter to them who is in charge because they're making money anyway. Their life is fine.
It goes back to the Mayfield scene in the Mando season 2.
Well, and also DJ in
I was about to say, I will forever defend Canto Bite. One of the most important scenes in Star Wars.
For some people,
we can have that conversation.
Matter.
I would
and
love
if you're in maybe an outer rim planet, if you're a Jedi who's in hiding, you might just be like, if I fail, I'm dead for sure because the Empire finds out I'm a Jedi. So I'll just wait it out. And then if the New Republic wins, then fine, I can figure it out. But if the Empire stays, I need to make sure that I am protected.
No.
Yeah, everyone in the rebellion is sacrificing. I mean, Luthen Real's speech lives rent free in my head. Like
I burn myself for a sunrise I'll never see.
Yeah, they're sacrificing their freedom. They're sacrificing their future. They're sacrificing everything that they love dearly and close to them in order to take down the tyranny that's tearing up the galaxy and making out the Jedi and were once warriors now in the shredders.
Well, and the other thing is though, if you watch Rebels, like the next episode that we are going to be covering is The Call, and you see Kanan and Ezra on the offensive. Like that's not traditional Jedi teachings. And like you have to adapt. And I feel like the Jedi that might have survived, that's why they didn't join up, because they couldn't adapt. Because they were like, these are the teachings that we were taught. They're too they just are stuck in their ways, or B, they're too afraid, as we're talking about that could
if you've experienced the violence of the Clone Wars, you might just not be wanting to fight.
Yeah, exactly.
Like that's also, it's like you just might not want to have another war if you spent like a big chunk of your life, or like not, but like if you spent years fighting one, you might not be so inclined to join into one, especially one that seemed like it was not going to work.
Well, yeah, and you can also say the same thing for the clones. Like people are like, why didn't more clones join up? Well,
I don't know.
See how it ended for them. Like what are we really gonna throw those guys? Like, I mean, look at the episode in Rebels when Kanan shows up and Wolf freaks out in PTSD. Like, you really want those guys in the rebel? Like, I mean, some of them are okay, but like not all of them are gonna be okay to do that type of stuff.
Yeah, they have PTSD and they spent years of their, and like once again, if as we see in the Bad Batch they're also getting rid of the clones, then that's also added layer that like I'm not going to go against the Empire because I saw what they did to the other people like me. So why would I do that when I could just continue to live here, see how this plays out, and then I'm sure the New Republic will be fine with me.
Which I'm very curious of what Cody's going to be doing once all the conscripted soldiers come into play with the Empire.
Well, I mean, even beyond that, Kix.
True.
Because he got hibernated and jumped into hyperspace. He doesn't even know what happened.
What about that? Yeah, because he gets
Dooku's puppet
discovered
just-
by
He's found by Sir Captain Sidon of
Yeah, because he tries to investigate what happened to Fives, and then he gets jumped into hyperspace and gets
I forget.
hibernated.
Was that
and
a
turned into
comic,
clone.
right? It was like
And
the
then-
Crimson Corsair and like Dooku's
Mhm.
lost
and then-
treasure or something like that.
and Kix comes out of hibernation, right?
Yeah, in the sequel
Yeah,
era.
in the sequels.
Holy fuck, dude.
Yeah.
That
Like,
would
in
be
the middle of the
goddamn.
sequels.
I'm like 80. I'm supposed to be 80. Damn. That's crazy.
I wonder how. Yeah, his hibernation sickness.
What? Did the Jedi win? No.
Oh, did we win?
Well,
You know what's gonna happen? They're gonna
well,
show
it depends on
they didn't.
from a
Let me
certain
show
point
you
of
how they
view.
lost. Directed by Dave Filoni.
and then Boolio comes in.
Wait,
You
directed by
lost the war.
Directed by Trapper Wolf.
Oh,
He's really into that's his side project. He really just is a part of like the New Republic stuff to fund his Jedi story that he's filming.
Oh, Jesus.
Oh my
All
god.
right. Well, Chris, I think that might be a good ending point for this first discussion.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I say we give our final thoughts.
Yeah, so we'll see what goes on in the Mando season 3, whether this conversation off this 2-second clip was necessary in the sense of it wasn't actually Order 66. I really hope it was the dark saber retrieval. I
That
think
would be cool.
everyone here can agree that we don't need to see more Padawans and younglings getting murdered. And we'll see. As long as the narrative relevance and impact is fresh in a Order 66 post Order 66 scenario, I think we're good. But it shouldn't just be done for having it in said media.
Yeah.
Although I will say that one of the best Order 66 scenes did not come in any Star Wars visual media. It was in the comics when what was his name? Farron Barr flipped it on the Inquisitors. That was awesome.
Yeah.
That's it.
What if he did? What, imagine he's like revive Order 66. He's like, oh hey, how are you? And then they're all buddy, and they're like, Vader, get him.
That's essentially what he did with the Inquisitors. He was just like mind trick Order 66, and the clones turned on the Inquisitors. I was like,
Yeah.
oh, that's smart.
Yeah, that's right.
Editing big brain.
Perfect ratio.
Chase.
I think I did.
Oh no.
Oh no.
Can you hear me?
Yes.
We went so well for so long, and then we get to the end.
Can you hear me now?
Yeah.
Can hear you, but
yeah,
can't really
we-
see you.
Yeah.
Okay. You guys are all going in and out for me. Your cameras are. But if you can hear me, is,
Oh no, Chase.
Chase.
Can you hear
We're
me?
going
There you
to
go. No, that's better. That's better. All right, now talk.
am-
Oh no.
No.
I can see
No.
you guys.
No.
I can still hear you guys.
I can hear you. Can you
Wait,
hear me?
I think you're good. I think you're good, Chase.
Am I good? I've heard everything you guys have said.
Every time you stop to say that, you're good. But
You
then
stop
when
it
we
then, you're
say
like,
you're good,
"Ah."
you're no longer good.
The end of this conversation, not the end
Go
of this.
go M. Go M. I'll hopefully this will be solved.
Okay,
Oh, it's better. I've approached this conversation with a lot of nuance, so I'm just gonna end by quoting Taylor Swift. When it comes to Order 66, get it off my desk.
Get that shit out of here.
I'm kind of over it. I think we need a little bit of a break. And then, we could return, like we were saying, with some fresh narratives, with some maybe fresh takes on it. But I think for the time being, just a little bit of a break.
Oh yeah.
Go ahead and just close that laptop, Dave. Go ahead and log off.
Chase, I'm assuming Ravioli is the name of your cat, right?
It's my roommate's cat. My cat
Okay.
is named Lilybug, and she's sweet.
Oh, baby.
W's in the chat for
But
Lilybug.
if I'm back, hope
Yeah,
I'm
you're
back.
back. Good.
You guys were black squares for a while. and I could hear everything you guys were saying. So
Yeah,
this was all your fault. From my end, this was your fault.
You're good for now, so let's.
From my point of view, the Jedi were evil.
Before everything else like shits the bed, my perspective is number one, wait and see. You know, maybe this is going to be another Order 66 scene, and maybe it's going to have a lot of emotional weight. Maybe it's going to change some perspectives on it. Who knows? We have 2 months to figure that out. But no, I do think my overall perception is like, I don't think it's necessary to show us the actions of Order 66 again, but I do think it is a topic that is worth exploring and will always be worth exploring. And I think as long as it's done tastefully and by people who actually care about the situation and want to tell a important story about it, keep going. You know, it's one of those things, like, it's never a bad story until it becomes a bad story. So if it just gets tasteless and boring and we cater to certain aspects of the fandom, then it's like, okay, now you're just going to write a bad story. But if we're going to be like, hey, let's keep telling stories like the story of Rex and Ahsoka during Order 66. Let's keep telling stories like Crosshair and the Bad Batch. Like, these are good stories that involve Order 66 heavily, and they're worth telling. But just to be like, you know what? Anakin Skywalker in Order 66, that is, we need to find out all of his footing. We need to know every direction the lightsaber was slashed. Like, no, we don't need that.
All right.
And we need Resistance Season 3.
Actually, that's fact. You know, I can get behind that one.
Yes.
That's true.
Hereth.
I mean, everyone hit the nail on the head. What can further be said about this? I think I agree with Luke that, like, Order 66 depends on the characters involved and what are we going to tell. Like, I'm sorry, Book of Boba Fett is still my least favorite because it literally served zero purpose at all, and it was just like supposed to tease us for Mando season 3. Why even include it?
I saw Oppo again. Okay, I like Oppo.
You know what, Chris? At least you got some satisfaction out of it. At least I got a good thumbnail out of it.
Yeah,
There were some W's in here occasionally, but still, I think Order 66 is, again, a topic that is so deep and layered, but it's like, I think Twitter is not the platform to have it on because Twitter is so surface level that we remove all the nuances and context to everything, and people just immediately just do into that. So, like, I think this platform right here is perfect for these kind of conversations, and I think I'm glad we had this conversation because it was like worth having overall.
Char.
So, two things. One,
Okay.
I would really like if it was the Darksaber retrieval, because this could be like a theory. So what if, when Mando goes to Mandalore to heal his, or whatever his transgressions were, to become a Mandalorian, a true Mandalorian once again. And since Grogu is finally rediscovering his powers and rekindling what he once was, what if he discovers that he has Force psychometry and he touches one of those old rusted
Or he touches
Mandalorian
the
helmets?
Darksaber.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, I mean, I feel like he will put his hand on one of the Mandalorian helmets, and he's able to envision what it was like back when Tar Vizsla was going.
We
to
are
reclaim.
a figment of your imagination.
Oh no, not Tar Vizsla. Tar Vizsla. I'm talking about like when the Mandalorians went to go reclaim the Darksaber.
Yeah.
And then 2, we could also see how Grogu escaped, but he wasn't. I don't think he was saved by anyone. So think about this though. What if he was being protected, or he was like in the middle of the chaos, and then one of the clones gets cut down, and the helmet comes over Grogu, and like he's hiding under a clone helmet? Because I mean, the clone helmet could fit him; it could wrap around him, and people would never notice.
Wait.
I mean,
okay.
Are you saying Grogu with a clone helmet on people wouldn't notice?
Like if a clone.
Oh,
gets
that's
cut
even
down-
okay. Hold on, time out. That if people are gonna bitch about Obi-Wan putting Leia in a fucking goddamn trench coat, people are gonna lose their minds about that. Trust me, that's not gonna.
Or wait,
that will piss
even
me
better,
off.
the fact that there's apparently face-changing technology that Obi-Wan uses in the Clone Wars, and it's never once used again in Star Wars.
No,
Bullshit like that.
No, because think about this though. Because what if the clone gets cut down, the helmet goes over Grogu, and the way he's able to see all that stuff happen before him is because he's
skip
covered
it.
by something.
Shit, this is a one-time use. You know, you get the shot.
With the clone, like,
He's seeing through the eye. He's seeing through the eye holes of the clone helmet.
Other member.
He's seeing through the eye holes of the clone helmet that's covering him.
No. Why is that helmet moving? It's like you just see it like scurry.
I don't know. Yeah, why didn't the people in Toy Story 2 realize why those cones were moving in the middle of the street? I don't know.
It's Omega.
Anyway,
What sparked the Order 66 conversation is the Mandalorian season 3 trailer that came out on Monday.
I'm wondering if that's X-Core on the Conspiracy Cantina.
It's probably because DePaul was on the other account. Unless DePaul's trolling us, it would be the funniest troll.
Yeah. Thank you for the 199, sir. Appreciate it.
Thanks, Jeffrey.
Jeffrey.
Bezos.
But yeah, I think Order 66. Do I feel like we need to see it anymore? Absolutely not. But when it is used, when it has been used, it's been used for narrative purposes. And I feel like that is what it should be used for. I don't want to see that in senseless violence. I don't want to see that. But if it's used in a narrative to like tell a story and that's what it's being used for, I think it's completely fine. I am with everybody that I think after we find out what happens to Grogu, or even if that happens, be done with it.
Not even just. I agree with some people. Like, not even just Order 66 itself. We need to distance ourselves from the Clone Wars and prequel era as a whole.
Yeah, I agree. I think we need to get
my
into more
Lando
sequel,
show?
Lando show. We need to get away from the prequel era. As much as I do love the prequel era, I think we need to get more.
Getting to the point where I know where Ahsoka Tano shat one day in the bed.
Yeah, exactly. So, but
I
no,
think-
I think
Yeah, visual media, go elsewhere. I would take more prequel era books.
Yes,
because
prequel
there's a
era
lot
books.
of time. There's okay.
There's a lot, but I've also cut. There's a lot of prequel era books, and like
Look,
there's
is the
there's
biggest of prequels.
There's
I
like
mean, then
3
canon-
sequel books.
Then canonize the Jude Watson novels and
Yeah.
let's move on.
Yeah,
There we go.
I would agree.
Where's my Finn book?
Exactly. Where's
Cabot
the
Scott, where are you?
Where's my
yeah.
Janna book?
Finn book? Where's the? I know there's one Rose book, but more Rose Tico. Where's
more Tico.
we're promised a Finn or a Poe and Ray book.
I don't want to
Where
hear
was
any of this. Where's Rogue Squadron? Okay.
Yeah, valid.
What do you mean valid? Lando show was, announced at the same time.
Yeah, that is.
We haven't gotten the same amount of teasing and like bouncing back and forth with the Lando show that we have with
Patty
Rogue
Jenkins'
Squadron.
schedule cleared up, so
So yeah, this is my prediction right here. You heard it right here, right now. Grogu will be added to the very limited list of Jedi that have Force psychometry.
Okay.
And will
But-
become part of Rogue Squadron.
Yes.
so true.
Grogu in the pilot seat, like.
Chris.
Rogue
I
7.
feel like it's,
Look again.
Wait, Porkins, you're still alive? How?
Someone told him to eject into deep space.
I feel like it's a good one for you to lead off. I'm not to lead off, to end it off.
All right. Well, thank you to our incredible panelists. Master Allen and LadydragonJJ are no longer with us, but we thank
The one with
them
the
for
Force.
their contribution.
Rest in peace.
Well, I okay, they're no longer with us right now on the screen. They
We
went to
didn't
go
need to
do
get
other
that
things
fucking
with their
deep.
families.
Jesus Lord.
Thank you to Chase and M. Let the people know where they can find you on all the social media platforms. Emily.
You can find me on Twitter and Instagram at _StardustM, on TikTok at StardustM, and you can listen to my podcast Kessel Run Relay. My host made my co-host made a very exciting announcement today. That's their personal life, but you guys should go support them. And also, everyone go follow Alden Ehrenreich on Instagram. He made an Instagram recently. His flip phone era is over, and he now has an Instagram, and he has like 500 followers right now. So get on the ground floor. Of
maybe he'll start following people after 1,000. Who knows?
I told him when he had like 36. So
maybe M will be.
I told him at 66. That's just a bad sign.
Oh.
Where was Han Solo during Order 66?
he was, I think, canonically 10 years old, so he may have had a Jedi action figure.
Remember, he was supposed to be Revenge of the Sith originally, the young little boy at Chewbacca. Why? I don't know.
He was quite literally probably in the trenches of Corellia.
Yeah. And that's a planet that we don't really get much from.
Midnight Horizon, read it.
Yeah.
Well, no, besides Midnight Horizon, but I mean like in the Clone Wars. Like we don't really know much because it's like they're literally building Beneders. But anyway, Chase.
You can just follow me on TikTok at ForwardintotheBlack, where I talk about Star Wars and Star Citizen. Yeah, that's about it for me. Kris, I definitely want to talk to you about Canto Bite.
Oh yeah, we can.
But you guys know our whole thing. Follow Hereth everywhere at Hereth Productions or Hereth_edits. Follow Char J at everything.
Well, we didn't get to see where the good people want to follow you, like the whole 9 yards, 1 million times over.
Luke, you're lacking. You're lacking, dude.
This isn't really art.
You're lacking. You're lacking. You're lacking.
Would you just shut? All right. Nope. Don't make me do it. I'll do it.
I have the button. Yeah. We're now where we can flip off the camera.
I have the button too, bud. Get out of here.
This isn't really our thing. It's a collaborative thing. So I don't really know how to do the whole ending part of it.
So thank you everyone for joining us. I hope you all enjoyed the conversation, and I hope you all have a wonderful night and weekend. For all of us here at the Lawwans.
For light and for life.
We are all the Republic.
And may the Force be with you.
And there are more of us.
Always.
And there will